got it.
Next to share screen.
Got it.
Says it's recording.
Who is at a desktop? Anybody at a desktop that they could pull up the agenda, Ken?
Yeah, I can give you a
Yeah,
second.
I
I
am.
got one.
I-
Yeah.
Charlie's got it, let him do it.
You guys are all prepared. Call the meeting to order at 6:39.
Okay. Do you want to
Okay.
know the next? Then you got to have approval of the minutes for May 6th.
Can I get a motion?
Sure.
Ken makes the motion.
Oh, I'll second. Why not?
Here comes Charlene. All in favor of, hi Charlene, all in favor of approving the minutes from May's meeting, say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay. Old business, Charlie?
Old business is Thompson suffragette, 100-6 months of suffrage.
Leslie, you want to review?
Sure, I can report on that. So we had our first event on May, oh geez,
20th.
20th, thank you. On like 2 weeks ago, wow, time's flying. We had our first event on May 20th, which was the take-home fast making kits. We had probably about 35 women or so. And then had a Zoom session where they made the kits together and listened to a fashion during that time, during the movement. And then we were fortunate enough to have Lieutenant Governor Susan Beisowitz join, as well as Senator May Flexer, and they spoke at the beginning of the event. So I would say it was a good success. The committee was hoping for, 20, and we got that, so it was good. And then the second event was the Memorial Day Parade, where several folks participated in the Memorial Day Parade in costume. And then our next event coming up is June 14th. It's a free Zoom presentation on the legacy of Prudence Crandall with author Don Williams. And that's on June 14th. And so we currently have around 8 folks registered, again, hoping for 20 to 25. So, yeah.
Do we have any word on the concert in July?
Yep. So on the concert in July, I'm meeting with Rich and Amy next week to discuss the summer concerts and the potential of borrowing a flatbed trailer to allow for more room for the musicians playing. So the July 17th concert right now is on as scheduled. Currently the state guidelines are crowd of 25, expected to go up on June 20th to outdoor of 50, expected by July time to be at 100. So my goal would be to move the concerts to a larger field area, potentially the Riverside baseball field on the flatbed trailer, so that there's more room for folks to spread out on the grass should we get, 75 folks. That tight space on the gazebo is a lot smaller. So I think we're going to be good to go forward. It will not be an all-female band, just due to some members not feeling comfortable playing that soon. So I think, but we will have a band on the 17th.
So the only other thing I'll mention is Denise Merrill actually did try to get into the call, and she was late, but she was present. So I considered that present. But and I think Susan and I think that was pretty cool that we, were able to shift gears and still offer something. That's all I wanted to add about that.
Yeah, I think that so we have a meeting on the 11th. The suffrage committee has a meeting on the 11th, and so we'll be looking at our events going forward and making any adjustments.
So
as
now
needed.
that our concert is going forward, is there any chance that we're gonna look to do a pop-up at this?
Ooh.
I mean, if you wanted me to start to try to organize a, like a little, tent fair, I could try to do it, but I think you're pressing your luck. It's wicked short notice, although obviously everybody's events are canceled, so the same kind of problem won't occur in terms of, good people being not available. I mean, we could try.
I don't know that I was looking for a big kickoff, but I was just thinking, could he get one done? And that be, we sell refreshments out of it for the concert. Or our Father's Table sells refreshments out of it. Just one, not the real kickoff of the village, but maybe one.
The only
I'm sorry, you meant an actual shed, not just pop-up vendors. We don't have the funds in EDC to pay Dave Eddy until fiscal 20. Well, it is in July, so
That's right.
I could try and see what his schedule is like.
The only challenge is, Renee, is that I'm looking at moving the concert over to the field, and so we'd have to really think about the location, because I have had people reach out asking to rent the field. So it wouldn't be able to have like a permanent home, on the field.
Yeah.
And so if we're not at if we were at the gazebo, putting it near the gazebo, that would make sense. But I'm hoping to go somewhere where social distancing can be, where we have a larger green space for social distancing.
Well, I'm kind of visualizing that like he did for Community Day. Didn't he keep it right on a trailer? And we could put it around the area of the flagpole, so it's still on the cement. The doors facing the field. And let's face it, Mike's stand has been open this whole time. They've been in lines upon lines getting food out of that every time I go by. So I just thought it would be a way to at least do somewhat of our goal of promoting that. And
yeah, I did also want to potentially reach out, because a lot of in the past where we've struggled with getting food trucks, at the concerts, there's a potential, maybe because larger events have been canceled, there's a potential for food trucks to consider some of these smaller events, because
I understand that, but I want to tie it back to our own EDC.
Yeah.
Right. And a food truck from Worcester that's not gonna be a huge benefit for us.
Yeah.
I mean, I get it if we were doing a food truck thing, and we may have 3 in our area and we need these others to make it more of a thing, but I don't know. I'm willing to hear what other people have to say.
Well, what if you did the pop-up and sold exclusively something, and then if she can find a few food trucks that are different than what's in the pop-up, then we could have a couple of different options. Do you know what I'm saying? Her still being able to do the food.
I think that until I have the meeting next week, to be honest with you, I'm not going to know if summer concerts are happening. So I will know for sure next week what concerts are going forward and what aren't. I think maybe it's more realistic to think about having a pop-up if we have summer concerts, to have it in August, whether it's the shed or this or that. But I mean, you're talking about, 4 weeks turnaround on something that might not even be happening.
Right. Okay. Well, let's not wait.
So regardless, let's wait until we know what's going on with the concerts themselves. I can probably carve out time to get some vendors on site even by July 17th. And I can certainly ask Dave Eddy if he can turn around a finished shed to us. This is the only substantive reservation I have about that. When we were previously talking about this, it was with the idea that we would then have a vendor to do the season. But I'm definitely not going to be able to get that between now and then. So if we do it, I guess we've got 4 concerts potentially that it could be open at, but then what? So I'm not saying I think it's a bad idea. I'm saying that's the only sort of drawback I see.
Because then it sits. Being
Well, it would,
unused.
then it sits in its home, like where it's gonna end up, that's the beginning of one. And then
And
the next two, you know what I mean?
And we still could do, I mean, and again, I don't know that because we put that on hold, because everything got on hold, whether we worked out the details of how that renting was going to work. I could see a holiday outdoor event in the village or in the park that again, a vendor could be selling hot chocolate, whatever, they could be selling something. So I don't know. It's not that it has to end with the concerts. So, I mean, I know five events doesn't make it for a business. I get that, but.
Yeah, I mean, it can certainly be done as a one-off or, you know, one featured vendor for 4 or 5 events plus, you know, tents and tables. It can be done.
Yeah, so you're thinking bigger than I was at this point about it, but let's wait till next week, I think, until Leslie has more firm. Charlie had a comment though. Go ahead, Charlie.
Yes, a suggestion in the interest of dispersing the crowd, perhaps we could think in terms of the pop-up being near the gazebo, but still go with Leslie's idea of having the band on a flatbed over at the ballpark so that people have more access, more room in between. And in the long run, we do want to think in terms of having that pop-up village in the gazebo area. So it kind of gives us a chance to see what it fits like, if anything fits in there, and whether it's July or August. What do you think about that?
I think either way is it's budgeted to have a to have one of these pop-up built. Is that correct?
Yes.
So,
yeah, starting in fiscal 21.
Great.
So
reach out and get the building of it started so that then when we know it's ready, we can talk about, well, where are we going to put it? Because then I will have known at that point, are concerts happening at the gazebo or are concerts happening, you know, on this trailer? And then it's.
I think, Leslie, though, that Tira, you know, and I probably chatted about it, but it seems to me that we thought that we weren't going to have that built now until spring of 21 because of COVID. But things seem to be loosening up faster than I thought they would.
Just because you have it built now and put there now doesn't mean you necessarily have to put stuff in it now.
No, it's just going to sit out in the weather that one more year being unused.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I mean, those are the details we have to work out. So first thing is finding out what the status of the concerts is. Second thing is finding out if Dave Eddy actually has the time to build one in the time frame we're proposing, because he is working on the Mason House with his crew. That's a big project.
Yep.
So while he's on board to do them in general, he may not be able to turn one around in 4 to 6 weeks.
Right.
Okay. Next on the agenda, Charlie,
is updating on P&Z regulation subcommittee meeting.
Oh, I heard I have 19 pages of minutes coming from that.
Yeah, I think we trimmed that down for you a little bit, although I don't know how much. So we had our first discussion of the comments received last night. It was, it went pretty smoothly, although it went long. It was 2.5 hours. It was almost 10 o'clock, I think, when everybody logged off. We didn't get to the full first discussion group stuff that I have, but the next one will be smoother. It's moving forward. So I'm still I'm still holding out to get the draft adopted. I think I have to give up on the 30th of June, but before the end of July. We're going to play it by ear. Regardless, I'm starting work on the POCD on 1st of July, and there's going to be some overlap that I didn't want, but it's going to be what it is. But it's moving forward. The discussion is good. Nobody tried to take us off the topic of the discussion guide, which was very important to me because that's where you start to lose your momentum and get all higgledy-piggledy. Cindy and Donna and I are going to sit down at 7 o'clock in the morning on Monday to fix some stuff about the actual application process. What we discovered from Cindy's comments, and it should have occurred to me before, of course, is that we didn't pay a ton of attention to that section of the draft because we just kind of assumed that it was all right, and we were more interested in the philosophical issues, you know, the big stuff. But Cindy sort of came around and said, this does not reflect what we're currently doing at all, and it reflects it so poorly that, you know, we don't even really know what to do with it. So she and Donna and I are going to fix that. But that's actually a fairly simple problem to solve once I get those two to lay it out for me in an orderly fashion. In some cases, I'm sure it's just me reordering the steps in that draft to match the way they're doing it. The part about that makes me a little nervous, and I think I said this to you earlier, Renee, is that, you know, we're considering online permitting. So whatever we decide now also has to match something that we don't have yet. You know, so it's kind of a leap of faith, but
yeah, I think though that actually is something that can happen relatively quickly with the new software for permitting.
I hope so. As you know, I would have signed up for it, you know, months ago.
Now, how detailed?
But it wasn't the time.
How detailed is that? Charlene, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, did you see it here? How do I do that? I did it here, then I went and raised my hand somewhere else. I don't know what's happening.
Do it on the screen. That's a better place for
Like
it.
this?
Thank you.
Okay, I did.
Yeah, your hand's up. I see it.
Okay, so I have a concern, not with Tara and Cindy and Donna going through something, but my concern is that what we have to remember is those people are very old school. So they're going to teach you, Tara, how they're doing it because it works well for them, and they're not going to have to do a lot of work to make it work. You know what I'm saying? And so
I know exactly what you're saying, Charlene. You're talking about status quo bias, which is one of my great enemies in life.
And I don't want.
So,
I mean, I don't
yeah.
have a problem. I don't have a problem being a mouth and saying like, no, we're not doing it. That's the way we've been doing it for 78 years. We're trying to move forward. And I can already hear someone of that group saying, well, this is how we've been doing it, and this is how it's going to work. Well, it doesn't work anymore. So I don't know if you can say that being in a paid position. Can you verbalize that and not talk for 17 hours about something that they think that they're doing? It's not wrong. It's just not right.
Yeah, I know.
At this time.
Yeah, I know exactly what you're saying.
I'm coming to the meeting at 7 o'clock Monday morning.
Tara. Tara.
Yes.
Would it make more sense? And I don't know, because I don't think Amy's going to take the steps to get those demos in about Permit Link and the other one. There's a couple. Does it make more sense to see those demos before you guys sit down and work out a process?
Yeah, because they don't know it. They don't have a process. They're going to make the process that they're doing now and make a few adjustments because they'll want to make sure that they're working with us, but it's not the ultimate goal. There's a bigger picture. And
well, Donna is on board for permitting, online permitting. She is definitely on board for that, I think. But I don't know. It seems to me that if you're going to talk about a process, wouldn't you want to include the online portion?
Well, I would. I would, but I think the problem needs to be solved regardless.
Okay.
And if it's done right, what we set up should mirror the flow. It should mirror an optimized flow. So what I'm going to ask them to do is, before we even touch the text of the draft, I'm essentially going to have them map it for me, right? I want you to map the steps. I am applicant A. I come in, I want something that requires a simple zoning permit, a building of a house or a home occupation. What do I do? Where do I go? And if in that process, I see that I'm bouncing back and forth between offices, then that's a problem that needs to be addressed. How do we fix this inefficiency? Some of that will probably be fixed regardless with an online permitting system.
You're right.
Being someone who's never done anything with permitting, I'd be happy to be like the dumb resident who is like, hey, I'm here to file some permits. Like, how do I do this? Because I literally don't know anything about it. I've never filed a permit. I've never worked in that department. I'm clueless to how it would even, what it would even look like. I mean, I know what good processes look like, and I know how to not waste my time, but I don't.
Well,
You need a guinea pig, somebody to be I'm here to do this. Walk me through how I do it. I'm happy to do that.
That's what I suggested last night. Basically, somebody walks in the door, and I know I did it once, and I will never do it again. If I have to do anything in the town of Thompson, it will be when everything's changed, because we were everywhere, upstairs, downstairs, on the mail, on the phone, Frank running from a job to get back so he could take something from the first floor to the second floor, or from the second floor to the first floor, because they didn't do that. You're in the same building. I'm bringing a business to you. If I need you to run down 17 stairs to get a piece of paper to downstairs, you couldn't do that for me. They would not. And so I don't think.
That was a point of discussion last night about the sheds, right? Wouldn't it be simpler if when you made the first phone call, the person just told you you don't need a permit, but you need the setback, and the response was that's not her job? That almost drove me off a cliff.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
I cannot even believe that.
Right. They don't think that the process is skewed. They think it's a great process, and it works for them because the least work that they have to do, because, hey, they don't want to put a business in Thompson. The least they do, the better it is. And so I don't want them convincing you this works, because it doesn't.
So Charlene, here's an idea. You are a commissioner, so it would be totally appropriate for you to be at that meeting if you want to come in at 7 o'clock on Monday. And I'll just, let Cindy and Donna know that you're going to sit in there as a person who's gone through the process. Perfect. So that you can flag as we discuss that workflow, where you can say, no, wait, I did that and it was a terrible experience. I'd like to see this experience better.
And really, it would help, it would help people learn. I could learn something from it. Do you know what I mean? Even myself, as doing it once, I could get something off of it by hearing what they have to say, or I won't even say anything. I can just sit there, and I'll tell you, if I get up and leave in the first 5 minutes, good luck.
Okay, I'm out on a dog walk.
Hi, Brian.
Hi, Brian.
All right, so let's plan on that, Charlene, and I'll just confirm with you after I talk to Cindy and Donna.
Okay.
Tara, I have a question about the online permitting. Have the people that developed our website been involved in any of the discussions on this?
So Charlie, the two companies that it sounds like we're going to be looking at. Somebody's got some background noise.
It's probably Brian, because he's on his phone outside.
You don't.
Yeah, I'm muting.
So one is Civic Plus. They do have something we're going to be investigating. There is several that we are going to be looking at. We did sit down with, we got kind of a sales pitch from Civic Plus, which didn't go into a lot of depth. So I do have a contact who has reached out to me. I just have to follow up with her. However, what happened was this kind of took on a couple of different avenues, because Orla is really adamant about bringing on online payment in, and she wants to use one platform in order for all these different departments.
Yeah.
So
she's not the only one.
And Amy seemed to be, well, she piped in somewhere down the line on one of our emails that she had this contact with CCM. So I actually had kind of said, all right, well, then why don't you look at the permitting and we'll look at this other stuff. But I haven't heard anything back. So I'm going to push that as I normally push things, and we'll get those lined up, because Tara wants to work on this. I mean, it all ties together now. Look at this.
That's the point.
Yeah,
It has to
now
all
is
tie
really
together.
now is really the time because
Yes.
we are revamping our processes. A, B, we have an uncertain future in terms of in-person interactions, and C, it's a best practice anyway.
Right.
We are behind the times.
And D, we're still under a development contract with the people that put together the website. So anything that we want to have, we've got a resource right there.
Yeah. Okay, are we good on regs?
Yeah, I think so.
Charlie,
It's going to be my life for the next few weeks. So,
Charles,
Item 3 on the agenda, River Mill, update River Mill development project.
well, everybody's guess is as good as anybody else's guess here. Mizrach's meeting next Friday, so I expect we'll have some form of rudimentary update from Gumpert at that time. But I don't get updates from him with any regularity.
right.
Well, I think,
Go ahead, Charlie.
No, it's me. The only thing that I got last night from the Board of Selectmen's meeting, I did bring it up. You know, where are we? And she said she spoke with Gumpert on Thursday last week. And I basically said I'd really like to see from our town attorney what we can exactly do to aid him in moving the project forward, you know, with incentives. And she was going to get that from Halloran and Sage, so that way we could review it and, you know, see where we're headed. Because we got to make this work. There's no doubt about it.
We
Okay,
have to.
yeah.
Somebody's developing a mill up in Dudley, and it's going to be our big competition. I think it's
The
even a
same
more
guy, I
attractive
think.
building.
It
Is
is
it?
the same guy. It's Gumpert.
It is?
So, yeah, we kind of knew he was sniffing around for mill properties elsewhere in the region.
So we definitely
He looked
have
at
to make sure.
Southbridge. He looked at someplace else.
So
We
my
definitely
question,
have to make sure that everybody is aware of the fact we could lose him as our key mover and shaker unless we can provide him with reasons to be here.
does,
He's got too much invested to walk away. So,
not
however,
necessarily.
not
Ah.
necessarily.
Yeah, because they can write it off as a business loss on their taxes. There's all kinds of loopholes that.
you know, he has a lot of other irons in the fire because he thinks big. He's still trying to move it forward. You know, he did reach out again, you know, for the tax incentives that we got last month, and Amy finally, you know, had brought it up in front of the mill, you know, mill
Right.
redevelopment. So, I mean, these are all positive things. He's ready to start the next phase.
Good.
So,
But
Right,
just,
but if, doesn't she have, if he's already suggested something and now it's back in our court about these taxes, 4 weeks have gone by, he
That's
could get
right.
so deep in the other place that he could be like, you know what? This is, even though we think it's going places, he knows what it looks like going places. And if he sees a stall, then he'll just dump his money in Webster.
I would hope that doesn't happen.
So do
I
hope
wouldn't.
it doesn't
I wouldn't
happen,
be.
but-
I wouldn't be excessively concerned about that because remember, all along he's talked about a 10 to 11-year process, and I'm sure HUD financing doesn't work quickly. Now,
Well, if he's
I
waiting,
am
if
certainly just as disappointed not to have more regular updates on the progress between, you know, in the communication between the selectman's office and the developer. I'd like to get those more than once a month.
So what-
You
let me
know,
tell-
but Halloran and Sage was working up something that I feel was an accurate statement. So, you know.
They were, and John Gumpert can communicate an awful lot all at once, and then he'll go silent for quite a long period of time, depending on what he's working on, you know, in the situation.
so I'm going to suggest that for branding, I reach out prior to our meeting. And it's good to have Ken. I mean, we've gotten your input, but I'd love to see more of that info. What is happening? Do we know if the counter offer went back to Gumpert? Do we know that? And who approves that counter offer? Wouldn't that be the Board of Selectmen?
That would be the Board of Selectmen would be reviewing it.
So
And
did
then-
it go to him already? So he put an offer in, you guys, did you
Well, no,
look at it?
John has made the same, request, to do with what can we do with the taxes? What can we do going forward? The penalties.
Kenny,
what?
he did a hard copy document.
Yeah.
There was a physical document with items that we saw. What was
What happened?
counter? That's all I want to know.
Right. Where I've got Terry, did you get the response back from Halloran and Sage?
I had the initial one, which was from actually a colleague. I think he was actually outside of Halloran and Sage, but it was Halloran and Sage who sent it. So
Yeah.
Gumpert sent his ask list. Amy sent that to the attorney. The attorney got an opinion from another
Attorneys.
firm who must be a specialist in the matter,
Real estate or something.
who identified that the statutory language does not allow for what Gumpert specifically was asking. So then Amy was going back to Halloran and Sage to say, can you write this up in a way that gets it to as close to what Gumpert is asking as we can accomplish within the statutory limitations? I had tacked on a couple of questions to that, to which I did not get responses, which that disappointed me. I may just ask Ken myself. It's not like, I can't call him myself. One of which is there anything we can do in a regulatory format, with our zoning regulations that would ease some of the, lubricate some of the conditions towards the relief? And the other one, based, in the mill redevelopment area, there was some suggestions, and I don't remember exactly what it was off the top of my head, but it was something about, how if it's in a certain kind of area, identified kind of area for redevelopment, you could get an abatement for up to a certain period, something like that. So, is that something that we could put in that section of the regulations? I'd like to have that information in the short term. And the other one was related to the idea of a blight ordinance. There was some language in the other attorney's opinion that implied to me that if we had a blight ordinance adopted, that it would also tack on an ability to abate some taxes by taking advantage of, credits in blighted areas. I don't have responses to either of those things.
What was that date? What was the last date that anything has had any, that right there, when that came back with no answers to your questions, but the wordage?
For probably 3 weeks, because it was right around the last MISRAC meeting.
Okay.
I think we as branding have to stay more on this. I have to say that, we've been all crazy and going on a lot of different directions, but I don't want us to take our eye off this ball. I'm a little nervous.
Well, that's why I asked Amy last night to get something from the attorney about what we can actually do.
So you kind of pushed that last night.
I pushed it last night because,
Okay.
The taxes and everything are fairly simple to figure out where we are. This is what is owed. Here we are. What can we do to work that out? And maybe we get creative, even though the statutes say you can only do so much, doesn't mean that we can't, be creative with the numbers and make some changes. So we're looking at.
Well, he was asking for a total of 20 years of abatements, and the most that legally can be extended are probably 17. So there was one limitation that was actually fairly easy to identify. Ken, you're in the best position here, right? Because you're on this commission,
Yeah.
committee, whatever we are. You're on this committee. You're on. You're not exactly on MISRAC, but you attend MISRAC, and you are an elected selectman. So you are in the best position to continue that dialogue and give us that report. So I guess what I would suggest is just before each of your meetings, contact Marie and make sure that that is an agenda item.
Yeah, because I brought it up under, selectmen's comments. that we need something because this, according to the MISRAC meeting, Gumpert is ready to start moving forward.
Well,
You
let's,
start
Right,
talking
so
numbers,
but if you
he's getting closer.
if you suggest it as a specific agenda line item,
Yeah.
right, then that will prompt the first selectman to have that information in hand in that moment. Instead of selectman's comments, you could make a comment about anything. It could be this, it could be something else important that comes up, and you should have that freedom. This should be a regular agenda item about something of pressing importance that we would like biweekly updates on. And you're in a great position to do that.
Tara,
I will
Tara,
make
you
sure
need
that's
to-
on the next meeting.
Okay.
Oh, thank you,
Darlene?
sir.
Tara, if you do not get something that we can see you and you can see us, I will buy it for you, because you talk and we see a telephone, and then when we're like trying to but you can't see that.
I can see you.
You can
you
see me.
keep going and going
Oh, then
and
stop
going.
talking. My thing is, Ken, is don't make it always a statement. Make sure we're getting something out of it, because a statement is nothing's required on the other end. We want something. There should be something happening every single month, every month. And
Yes.
if there's not, something's wrong.
And that's,
Yes.
She
That's what
said
the-
she would have. She said
Go
she
ahead.
would have something for us at the next meeting.
So that's 2 months that we've with nothing. 3 weeks that Tara has gotten that one paperwork in, and now it's another 4 weeks. Sometimes when they say they're going to have something, that's just buying time.
Tara?
Yeah.
Tara, this is always on MISRAC's agenda. Could we not push her for some information that can be shared at that meeting?
Well, I think we generally do. She didn't happen to attend the last meeting.
I'm just talking about
So,
her
you know.
outreach ahead of time, just like you said to Ken, make it so
We
she's got
have.
the report.
Yeah, we have had that conversation with her directly, and it is a regular agenda item, and she will give an update, but the updates have been thin. Now maybe it's because
Watery.
up until the tax thing, there probably wasn't much substantive. Ken is correct when he says the guy will go radio silent for a while, and then he'll come back when he needs something, which is not that unusual. Yeah, I would like more substantive and more regular updates as well. We have made that request at every MISRAC meeting, and we occasionally get some good ones, like the tax one. She was actually pretty forthcoming with that. But I can't force her to make it a priority to communicate with us. That's why the agendas are useful, because the agendas put it right there in black and white. We expect in this time that we will have an update on this item.
All I would suggest is if, like, she didn't make a meeting, you said, so I would send, Amy, if you are unable to make the meeting, could we get a written report on the update from River Mill, even if it's an email, you know what I mean? Send me an email with the update, so that, because the committees are asking.
Yeah.
That's a good
Yeah,
idea.
that's fair. And when Janet comes with the agenda next week, because she'll do that early next week, she'll create the agenda. The item will be on there, and I'll use that as a prompt to say, Amy, are you attending? Do you have an update? If you're not attending, could you pass the update to me?
And again, I understand what you're saying. You do not always get replies or answers to what you ask for. So all you can do is try.
That is correct, madam.
Good. But I just feel like, I kind of feel like we lost a little bit of our oomph with that, but. All right, next, Charlie.
Trails update. And if Brian, I think, is still on, if he wants to chime in, he's certainly welcome. We had a Trails Committee meeting on Monday night, and at it, we reviewed and approved a letter that went to the Board of Selectmen asking that the work to Airline Trail from Lowell Davis Road to Sandam Road take a priority, that the DPW begin to think of the Airline Trail as any other element of infrastructure within the town. I have since reached out to the 12-town task force and to some other people that I know to see if there is money available to buy the stone dust. I haven't gotten a reply back yet. But what we're dealing with in that section, that's a deterrent to joggers and bike riders, and it definitely needs to be addressed. We have also within that included that we would like to see a more regular mowing of the vegetation at the side of the trail. Japanese knotweed is growing in onto the trail from both sides in some areas. And that's something that can and should be done. The town has at least partial ownership of a mowing machine, and it should be up one side and down the other, no more than 2 days of activity, and probably could be done in one day if the gates were all open.
Charlie, when was the last time you were out there?
I was out up at the train wreck site on Saturday. Will make it a week, so it was a little less than a week ago. I was up there with a man named Elliot Webb, who is a drone pilot and videographer, and we reviewed the area, and I have since asked for a waiver on the permit. The permit that would be necessary for him to launch and land a drone on state land is like $600. And the price that he's quoting us with the discount included is it's less than $200 for him to do the shoot and to do the edit and put this together. He's very enthusiastic about that project as a marketing tool for us to go out for private sector and public sector monies to help us make this a reality.
All right, just to get back to the mowing of the trail. I was told that they had been out there with the mower and they did a section of it.
They did the section near Sandam Road, and that didn't look too bad. I don't know how long it will take before it grows up, but I know just before the Rymacon relay last year, Brian Lafredo, John Kochekas, and myself were out there, and the weeds were taller than us. And we went out and fought our way through it. They went out with their mowing machine and cleaned it up nicely. And so, but the area where the Japanese knotweed is somewhere else along the trail. It wasn't where I've been. So John Kerchinkas told us about it, and I don't remember where he said it was.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Char.
Yeah, if my memory serves me correct, talking with Rich or one of the workers that were there, they were out on the trail, and I would have to say it would have been somewhere from Lowell Davis, I should say from 200 heading back towards Sandam, that they did some mowing.
Yeah, and I haven't been on that area. It's that area since last August. It's, as I said, that's the least pleasant section to walk or to ride my bike. So I just avoid that one.
Can I just?
I don't see any. I
ahead.
don't see any evidence. I don't see any evidence of mowing or maintenance from Lowell Davis towards Sandam this year. I know they cleared it last fall around November, but other than the trash being dumped there and finally getting cleaned up, I don't see anything in terms of any brush being clear. In fact, the last activity I saw was when some of the workers from the state park came up because they had free time, and they came up with just weed, whatever, the weed things.
Weed whacker.
and whack the weed. Yeah, and whack the weeds just around the gate, and then they left.
In addition to requesting information about the stone dust, I also requested information about the what is it that the state expects from the partnership with the towns along the airline trail?
That was my exact question.
They must have something in place. Every other rail trail that I know of is essentially set up so that the local municipality where it passes through will take care of the maintenance of it. And I don't know, I have not seen it. I have requested it and expect to get a report back that will say, here's our standard rich and famous agreement.
Kenny,
What?
do you have any recollection during your time as
Recollection to what?
about that agreement? Because that was my thought. When did that become town responsibility to start mowing that trail?
Well,
they take care of our parks.
they were supplying stone dust if we put it down. It was, they supplied the funds and we supplied
Yeah, I
it.
can see that. That was that was part of the construction, but I'm talking about the mowing and the maintenance like that.
Yeah.
Do you
I
recall?
know that
I
they are
don't
committed-
recall it. I know the last time we went for money, which was, I think Charlie went with us, we went up to Hartford. That was that 12 towns getting back together. Charlie was there. We were supposed to get some advertising or things of that nature. Other areas we're going to get more on funding. If you remember that, Charlie.
Yeah.
That group.
Yeah, that wasn't quite in Hartford, but it was way over there on Route 66 somewhere. Yeah, I don't know whether or not the stone dust funds are available. I've asked for that clarification and the other thing. Now, the other report about the airline trail that I think this group should be interested in, they are going out. They may have gone out today. They're going out within the next few days to download the data on a counter. Prior to the last report that I got showed over 1,000 people in January and over 1,000, closer to 2,000 in February, almost 3,000 in March, and then it just drops off. The graph just dropped off when we started to get the stay at home and self-quarantine orders. We don't know how many people are actually using it, but I was up there once to check the counter on a weekend, and there must have been 20 to 25 cars at New Road and East Thompson Road area. Lots of people are out there on the airline trail. The Trails Committee decided we would, as a courtesy to the users, we put in a porta-john, and it's there for weekly service for the rest of until October, I think. Then, you know, it's going to cost us $100 a month, but we figured that was worth it. There will be QR codes installed. I'm getting 2 in the mail on brochures that I will install up on the bulletin boards. And they're putting up something like a yard sign. And it's going to ask people to take a picture of the QR code and then answer the questionnaire about trail usage. We were doing that manually last year, but we're being discouraged from that kind of meeting. So people will be able to give us more information about who's using the trail, when they're using it, where they're coming from, are they spending money in town? And those are the issues that I think EDC needs to have at our fingertips as we are approaching not only potential private sectors for funding, but as we approach the state for support for these types of programs.
Who's putting that in, Charlie?
The Connecticut Trail Census group is putting in the QR codes.
Okay.
Guy's name is Charles Tracy, and he sent me an email today and said that he would be mailing 2 of the brochures to me, and that they were going to take care of the counter and the yard sign up there. And so I'll just keep an eye on the sign and make sure it doesn't get stolen. But then we have to update the kiosk up at the train wreck site. And so he said he would wait to hang up the brochures there. And I suggested just send them to me and I'll take care of it. There's that. One more trail that's coming into our inventory as we work out the details, but if you go to the Wyndham Land Trust's website and look up the Bull Hill Preserve, you will find a map that you can download. It's a geo map or GeoMy map or something. It shows how to go up Bull Hill Road from the Thompson side to the scenic overlook that looks out this way rather than the one where the 3 trees are that looks out towards Woodstock. And that's the mountain bike trail and the hiking trail. It's a very rugged hike because you're going up Bull Hill and that's steep. There's no place right now, there's no place up there to park a car.
Right.
We're putting something up on our website, our inventory list that says park on Ravenel Road or park at the Bull Hill Soccer Recreation Area and then walk. It's like 3 miles from Bull Hill Soccer Area to the end of the pavement on Bull Hill Road. And then you're up into the area which is the more interesting hiking area.
So more realistic for mountain biking at this point.
Absolutely. Plus, there's at least 2 areas up there that have been heavily used by motor dirt bikes or by ATVs. They were used that way by the people that donated the land, and they donated it on the proviso that they be allowed for the rest of their lives to go up there and drive around with their machines, which is why Wyndham Land Trust said, well, as long as we're doing that, maybe we should open it up for mountain biking. And so it wound up being a very interesting and serendipitous kind of turn of events. And it gives us a real draw, a real opportunity to pull people in. And the rest of the trails maps are completed. Part of the train wreck project area is to modify the tri-state marker loop and include that cart bridge in part of it. But we have to move slowly until we get a conservation easement from the people that own the land where the stone chamber is. That chamber is within 5 feet of the town's right of way. But when Mr. Rawson gave us the conservation easement, he didn't decide to move that extra few feet and help us out with that.
So Charlie, as for branding though, what can we do to help at this point? Is there
one thing is if we as branding also send a letter to the Board of Selectmen saying, hey, we agree with the things that the Trails Committee wants for the airline trail. I can forward to you the email that went out on Trails Committee letterhead, and I'll do that before I walk away from my computer tonight.
When did you send it, Charlie?
Charlie, I believe Renee has a copy as well.
Renee, okay. I think I understood that it went out and was in with the correspondence at your, when you guys met last night, but we also understood that was a special meeting.
Right. So it wasn't going until the next meeting on the 16th.
Yeah, no, there were a lot of threads of conversation bouncing back and forth on that, and for some reason I get 2 copies of every email on them. But yeah, we knew that there was a delay before the Board of Selectmen would actually look at it. So we are going to be asking Branding Committee and also EDC to send out separate versions of the letter with our own letterhead saying this needs to take a higher priority. It is something that will either discourage people from coming into Thompson or make them say, hey, wow, look I can do all of this and I can go get a pizza and beer. So
Charlie,
yes.
Since it's my letter, I'll just, again, for this committee, as I said, with Trails and with Tara and Renee know this, but for anyone else there, the purpose of my wanting to draft the letter from the committees was because I tried to communicate with Amy directly, and Amy did not seem to understand or the priority of the situation. She did talk to DPW on my initial letter and said they don't have time to do it. I understand. I told her in my follow-up, I understood that. They're not paving roads this year. I understand they've been shorthanded, but we're also in a situation where the trails are being used now and not in November. And my basic request in the letter was that it be considered in a higher priority, that maybe some other projects or maintenance can be moved back. That is why I wanted to submit this letter, because my second letter went unresponded, even though I sent it from my town email to her town email. I felt like if she wasn't going to respond or take it seriously, we needed to present it from Trails Committee at least. And since this trail in particular, because of its features, is so important to the NECOG study and the branding initiative in terms of getting people into town, seeing what the town has to offer, that it needs to be a higher priority. And her first response on the first letter was she didn't know that we had to take care of it. I don't know that, I don't know. Maybe she's never been briefed on it, but I wanted to make sure that she did know and she understood that it was part of our infrastructure.
And that, by the way, is the reason why I'm reaching out to the 12-town task force and the DEEP to find out, do they have money for stone dust? Can we move forward on this thing? And number two is, what is the agreement that they expect us and the other 12 towns or the other 11 towns to measure up to?
That's good, Charlie. I don't know, how can we, and I know it falls into this whole meeting, how can we as branding better communicate? Because obviously we didn't do a good job communicating to our Board of Finance either of the priorities that we as a town have embraced for branding.
Charlie, I was not able to attend the Trails meeting, but a couple of things when I read the minutes, and I'll reach out to Karen, who's, the chair, I believe, right, Brian, is Karen the chair of that committee?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. I would highly recommend that we ask that a representative from DPW attend the trail meetings. Although recreation can attend from the standpoint of programmatic and marketing, bottom line is that the parks and the maintenance of the parks and our trails falls on the DPW. So what was happening and what I've seen in the years, that some of those were being communicated to me and then communicated to Rich. So there's a third party, that it's going through. So if the topic of conversation at a trails meeting is our parks and trails, we want the people who maintain those parks and trails and who control the budget for those parks and trails to be at the meeting to know what the needs are.
Well, that's why.
Thank you.
Leslie,
You said that so much better than I did when I tried to share that idea last month. But
it's bigger than that, though. It's bigger than that. I do not think we have our Board of Selectmen convinced that what we're doing for branding is going to matter. I don't think they're on board with that, even though we've reached out and done all of these kinds of informational game night, all of this kind of stuff. I think we failed at getting our message to the current Board of Selectmen and the current Board of Finance. It's like I'm in a twilight zone when we are reporting on things at the budget meetings.
I will.
I'm just going to take a mild correction I don't think the issue is that we have not communicated our purpose and priorities. I think that the priorities of the people we are communicating them to do not align with those priorities, and they are not inclined to shift their perspective. I don't think that there's been any lack of clarity, to some extent, even including with those people, because in the moment at like the game nights and some of the sort of more happy fuzzy things.
Yeah.
They are pleased by being involved, but you're talking about a mindset that believes one kind of thing about how you develop an economy and a community, and that thing is not in the same lane as the kind of community and economic development that we are regularly talking about, which is grassroots and bottom up. The priority, first of all, the priority from finance is obvious. They just don't want to spend money, period, right? That is the ideological bent that they have adopted, and they've expressed that. And, you know, in terms of the current Board of Selectmen and the people who have their ear, it is obvious when you hear them talk that what they believe is that economic development somehow happens because people come in from outside and do something to you or for you, right? We're going to attract businesses. We're going to, you know, we're going to get people to come here from Worcester. We're going to do this. We're going to do that. And I will continue to say, whenever it comes up in meetings where I'm attending, that is actually not how you build your local economy. You build it by serving the people you already have. It's like such a basic, it's basic to fundraising, it's basic to development. You improve what you have in place to attract from outside. It doesn't work the other way.
It does work the other way when you don't want to put the work into it, because it's easy for you to sit and do nothing and just think people are going to come. But we're the workers doing the work here in the town, trying to get people to come. And it's kind of disheartening knowing that we're bleeding the town of Thompson to try to get people to come in here, and they don't even have an interest in it. And so, Renee, we all have given 150%. And so I don't think that we can give any more to help change their mind, except that we just have to be just as loud. As much as we work with our hands and sweat, then we need to be just as loud with our voices and say, enough, I'm done. You're not listening to me. We're not playing games, and I've had enough, and call them on it.
And I know we've had some conversations in the chat room, but the real power obviously lies in the Board of Selectmen to some degree, because Rich says to her, well, that's not my priority. And she says, okay, honey, do anything you want. Where Ken was, look, this is a priority.
Get it done.
He is keyed into everything we were trying to do. And though Rich probably didn't like it every time, I'm sure he didn't, because he likes to get his way and do what he wants. I think he's wearing the pants there for sure. I'm sorry. I know it's public. It's being taped, but she's supposed to be leading the town, not the highway department.
I think an opportunity to bring this to I think one of the challenges too is that the timing of things. So, you know, budgets start in January, and if we haven't
been doing this for 2 years.
Right, I know, but budgets start in January, and if we haven't assessed the needs of the trails, then and we're communicating the needs of the trails in June when the budget's already been set, there's no opportunity to add money to the parks budget. You know, so we did try to add money to the parks budget this year, which was, you know, denied. So I think that
Leslie, this wasn't about money. The airline trail was not about money, because I think, for one, the trails has some money.
Right.
And it was about labor. It was a prioritizing the project, which maybe in some people that is money. It's really not a budget issue. What's going on here? I think it's a priority thing. And
yeah.
Rich,
the funny thing about, go ahead.
Go ahead, Tira.
So the funny thing about Public Works, and I was having this conversation with Chris over dinner one day, or I should say I was talking and Chris was not making any noise.
Yeah, that's more like
but Yeah, so the thing about public works is road work, everybody likes it, but road work's actually a loser for the town. Right? The roads themselves do not drive any economic growth.
Absolutely.
Sidewalks and trails actually do drive economic growth. It's demonstrated. You can go and find all kinds of think pieces online where, that'll show that if you have walkability, bikeability, livability on any level, that those are the things that drive development, right?
Yeah.
The roads themselves, although obviously everybody wants to have decent drivable roads, are a constant loser. When people talk about how we can't afford to have people moving in town because of the infrastructure, they're really talking about the roads, because almost everybody has private water and sewer. So what's the maintenance? The maintenance is the maintenance of roads, and when you make new roads, and how much labor that costs. You never recoup that, but you do recoup your investment in sidewalks, trails, bike trails, the things that people want to use to feel better about their community. But again, quality of life. I will bet you a dime that I could make that very argument and it would just sail over the heads. No matter how much data I put in front of them, it's an ideological and philosophical belief about what matters. And it's common, right? It's very common to believe that, because most people don't spend their time thinking about a sidewalk or a trail and how that's actually more valuable to the community at large. So that is an uphill slog, but that is the truth about public works projects. The ones that actually work for the public doing things in their community are more valuable in terms of their return.
Well, if you listen to the board, if I may, if you listen to the Board of Finance, all of they don't believe what economic development is doing is truly economic development. They see the garden, and we see it as little things that promote people to come into town, get more involved. They don't see it that way. They're expecting economic development to bring in the next paper container or whoever, and bring in jobs, and that's what they look at. The statements that they had made during the budget process was, well, we'll cut everything back and we'll make it up next year. You never make it up. There's just no way.
Never. I agree.
Yeah,
Right,
that kind of belief about economic development is one from people who don't work in or think about economic development, how it really works.
I know, but
The idea that you're going to get somebody to rescue you from outside is goofy.
Right, but that's what I try to say. We do everything. We're trying to build the town and save the town money all at the same time. Putnam doesn't do that. They spend the money, a lot of money, probably that they don't even have, and then people come in and they bring money in. And that was one of the things that Aaron McGarry had said when I was listening. He said, well, what has the economic development brought in for money? Well, we're trying to save you money. So here we are being logical and thinking like, well, let's not spend too much money because we don't want the town to, we don't want to spend too much money. But the things we're being so cheap on, we're kind of messing ourselves out of that, because we're not spending money so that they can see people coming in to make us money. So we're defeating our own part. I think we might be our worst enemy, trying to save a dime to make a buck.
I know.
Yeah, well, I'm not. There's no argument there, Charlene. I mean, they took away almost half our leverage funds from EDC. So they're asking EDC to do more with less.
And
okay, that's fine. We'll do it, but it's not really going to be more.
Well, yeah.
That's just a guideline, right? I mean, you can go over your budget, right?
No,
you can't.
Yes,
you cannot go over your budget.
Sometimes it happens. I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
A labor issue or something of that nature, yeah, you're going to do that.
What's that saying? It's better to ask for
For
forgiveness
forgiveness?
than
Yeah.
it is for permission. Oops,
No, but
sorry.
on that point,
Unless-
I will make a true actual statement though, is that, connected to DPW and parks was that one of the things that we had asked for in the fiscal 21 budget was more money, and one of those projects was in working on the lights in Riverside Park. And then a citizen reached out to the selectman's office complaining about the lights in Riverside Park. And then the first selectman came to the rec department asking if we had any funds to help pay for the lights in Riverside Park. I then said, no, that's part of the parks budget, which was cut for fiscal year 21. You'd have to ask Rich if there's any money in the parks budget to cover Riverside Park lights. And the lights are being worked on. I heard from Rich this week. He has an electrician coming out to work on those lights. I firmly believe that, and I said to the first selectman, it needs to be charged to parks so that the Board of Finance knows what it truly costs to maintain our parks. If we put together what Trails is putting in, what Rec is putting in, what EDC is putting in to cover what are our parks or our community areas, I think we'll find that it's much more than the $6,000 that's budgeted for parks.
Absolutely.
So,
Yeah.
it's.
Well, then let's do that. Let's draw up a statement that shows what contributions are coming in from other areas and what the shortfalls are. And sure, it's too late for this fiscal year, probably, but we need to be ahead of the curve. I thought we were ahead of the curve, but just listening to the comments now, I realized it's another area where I've been naive.
I think we are ahead on the curve on having such a dedicated, committee to trails, but it's just also getting the support of folks outside of that committee and this committee, and to understand the piece that it plays towards the greater town, and it's interesting because when you talk about economic development, my mind goes to the same thing. It goes to like bringing big business in, like that'll help pay for taxes, but that's a natural thing for me to think of. What I think about what we're doing is like town development, but I get that it's economic because that then is because those folks stay because they love where they live and they love what it provides. So I think, I don't know what the answer is.
Well,
but
you have to have a town that offers something. And so development comes from the inside out. If we invite them to come in now, what are they coming in for? There's not much. So we're trying to build something so people will come.
Right. Yep.
Well, I guess,
That's what I said about the airline
And
trail.
stay, Charlene, right? And stay.
Right.
so I
Stay.
guess
People who
I
are
guess-
here will stay.
we'll just
Well-
have to stay focused. Focused on what our goals have been.
Well,
Leslie-
you do
Speaking
have
of
right.
focus,
All right.
Brian,
speaking of focus, can we get back to the letter? Are we going to submit that under signature as well? I'll make a motion that
I'll
Branding
second that
submits
motion.
the same letter.
I second that motion.
so the motion is what, Brian, that Branding submit?
That Branding signs the letter, basically submitting the letter that we wrote from Trails and submitted with their signatories to that letter.
And
Okay, so that
Brandon
hasn't-
recommend that EDC does the same.
So let me just, the logistics of it. I thought the letter already was sent.
We can send it again with a different letterhead and different signatures.
So Brian, are you asking that we all send the same letter, but it's coming from 3 different boards, or
Yes.
one physical letter with all the signatures?
Well, I would have preferred one letter with all the signatures. Then I was under the impression that it was going to be at last night's select meeting, and I wanted to get in as soon as possible. Now that I know the meeting is until the 16th, we could either take that one letter and get, I don't know if what Karen's done with it, if she sent it in. I believe she sent it along today. So either we revise it with the other committee on it, or we send a separate letter again with just with the branding committee signing it as well?
I like the joint letter. So if we have time to, just ask her, just say, look, I'm, in submitting this one instead. So we'll work that out with her tomorrow then.
Okay.
So we have a motion and a second to sign the letter that's going to go to the selectmen in support of the work that needs to be done at the airline trail. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? No. All right, so thanks for getting us back on track. Charlie, what's next on our list?
Wayfinding project update.
Kelsey sent some more stuff over today. The virtual public workshop is scheduled for the 23rd, which off the top of my head is a Tuesday, 6 to 7:30 she's got scheduled for it. It's going to be a slideshow presentation with 4 presenters, Kelsey, John Guskowski, me, and Stephanie Stroud from NPS. And there's going to be interactive survey questions during the presentation as a part of it. We're going to do a dry run, the presenters, on the 16th, just to make sure it all flows the way we want. And that's a part of the requirement under the contract with CME for, the wayfinding program. At some point they're going to take all of the various surveys, the information from the public engagement, and they're going to put it into their final presentation and report back to us, which is also supposed to include, design options and, rough cost estimates, suggestions on how to pursue funding, that kind of thing. So it's, it's chugging along.
Okay.
Chug, chug.
Charlie, next.
Pop-up retail shops.
I think we covered that.
I thought we did pretty much as well. Next item is EDC branding budget.
Yeah, they took more money from us, but I'll take a look at it when we get the final report, and we'll shuffle our priorities around and figure out what we're funding with which funds. The good news is we are actually receiving funds. So by the way, when people ask what funds come in, we do leverage our funds in EDC to get more money from outside groups to accomplish these projects.
You've done a good job in the short time you've been here in getting those grants. So
yeah,
that needs to be highlighted. And to be honest with you, I thought Mary Ann used to do monthly or some sort of report to the selectman's office. To the selectmen, so it got read into the minute. Is that true, Ken?
No, I just got updates from her because I was very engaged with, working with her. So
I'm just saying that, we need to get the word out, what we've gotten in.
Is there a way to go back, like, how that the Board of Finance always says to the school, well, if you need more money, then just come and see us. Like, they make it sound like it's so invitable. Well, if we need more money to make EDC work because we're trying to build Thompson, can we go see them and ask for the money that they took from us?
The one that's got to ask is the Board of Selectmen.
Yeah,
but you know what? We've been asked to give money out of our budget back to the town's budget. We missed an opportunity. We should have put a cover letter on there and said, yeah, we'll give it back, but if we need more money to make something succeed,
right,
you got to remember that.
Yeah.
We're not being our own advocates.
Every time I sent any of our revisions back to Orla, I went into great detail about, why this would be able to work, how we're able to shift our priorities, and,
but it doesn't
interested in that.
That's not the place. That's not the place it needs to go. All she was looking at was your numbers. And so just going forward, just so you know, the same thing happens every time when a board presents to the selectmen. You give them all the reasons why you need these increases. You brag about your programs. You give them all this information. and all they're caring about is the numbers. Nothing gets forwarded to your Board of Finance. It's a ridiculous process. I've been saying this for years. I don't know why we do it that way. I did propose that the departments also go before the Board of Finance. So you're defending, because the Board of Selectmen, let's face it, they don't remember, every department and been able to give the details unless they were going to present a really thorough report for us. Nothing gets forwarded to the people who are making the decisions.
I would say there is only one member of the Board of Finance who I know was making regular attendance at those Board of Selectmen reviews, and that was Steve Herbert. I mean, I saw him in the building at many, and that makes sense because he was getting the in-depth review of each department in each line item. But yeah, I mean, they weren't hearing anything else from each department.
But anyway, we sidetracked.
Anyway, so we've got 15 grand down from 25 in this past year. We've got 7.5 coming in reimbursements. So that'll be, and I'm timing it to expend all of the grant funds by the end of June so that the reimbursements will come in fiscal 21. And as soon as I have the checks in hand, I will make sure that Orla makes sure that those funds go right back to EDC to pad what we lost. And that will enable us to do some of the things that we, have been discussing. Nothing is going to be in as fully fleshed out a form as we would have liked, but, Brian and I, that is, had some back and forth. I think we've got a plan. I mean, that's the best we can have is a plan. And I'll try to find ways to leverage those funds again. That's what I do.
Okay, Charlie?
Next item is a Z-fold map brochure.
No movement on that, and I am starting to have the feeling that what we are going to have to do is use that 4.5 that we voted on this year for that RFP. And then I think that there's actually some more excess in fiscal 20 to flesh out the 5,000 not to exceed. And then we can revisit that in 21, the brochure. Yep. I am still on ERTD. My time on the interim executive committee is actually going to come to a close at the end of June because of the way it's structured. I am still on it, and I'm still on the marketing committee, which is the most important one from our perspective. So I'll keep drilling that. We've got a meeting tomorrow, a full board meeting. So if it works out that I can discuss that brochure project with the matching fund to say, hey, look, what we want is the towns to have a letter of commitment who are willing to commit, right? So if ERTD commits to us, we can encumber the funds to them. If they're not going to commit to us, we're going to table that till 21, come back to it, and use the 4.5 that we voted on to put toward that project, and this year we'll put that towards the RFP. So we'll cover those projects somehow.
If and indeed that ends up being what we need to be doing.
Yeah, I mean, if you guys change your mind about it in going forward, that's fine. I still think it's a good project. But if it becomes too unwieldy because we can't get the commitment, then yeah, I'm not gonna beat a dead horse.
Well, no, I'm just thinking that now that it was sort of a rush because there was funds that had to be used, and there were funds that you could potentially leverage. If there's not that rush, and now we are able to do a marketing plan ahead of that, yeah, maybe that fits right into the marketing plan, and it's a win. But maybe it's not. Yeah. Maybe that's where we put our first 4,500 for marketing. Maybe it goes towards some sort of other avenue. We just have to look at that when it comes in.
Yeah, and the budget discussion is going to be in 2 weeks at EDC, and that's the last one for this fiscal year. So I'll have the information from tomorrow's ERTD meeting in hand, so we can make an intelligent choice. We should have we'll have had the RFP responses by then. So anybody who wants, I mean, almost everybody here is on EDC anyway, but anybody who's interested in the results of the RFP should dial into that one. Yeah, I mean, you know, like everything, we'll work it all out. But the brochure is fuzzy right now. I think that's fair to say.
Yeah. I know we have the RFP on the list somewhere. So what's next, Charlie?
Well, that's next, but before we go to it, I will say that we had some discussion about the Z-Fold at the Trails Committee meeting, and we are going to be going out to an outside printer to prepare a number of maps, which we've been supplying along the airline trail. One of the discussion points which I was lobbying for, originally we talked about getting some sponsorship, and we just were not in a position to push that. So it went to the wayside, and we redesigned the map with the space for the coupons disappearing. What occurred to me is that we really could have space for 6 different QR codes, one for EDC, like we've got up there. If I go up to the kiosks along the airline trail, I get shoot the QR code, and I get EDC's page with the list of all the restaurants. We could have one for Historical Society. We could have one for additional trails information. What else? We could have up to 6. But if we go to put QR codes that are more to the mission statement of EDC, then when we go out for the next batch to be printed, EDC should probably kick a few dollars into that printing costs as well.
So,
well, that's certainly an alternate use for those funds, possibly.
Yeah.
So
for some of them anyway, I think our motion was to spend up to $200, and however many color maps we can get with 2-sided. When you look on the back side now, it tells people where they can park, gives them information about the trails in the general area. I will send you the file as well, so you can look at it. And I'll send you the file that's got the space for the for codes. The QR codes weren't even on our radar when we worked this thing up. It was 2017 that we worked up this map the first time. So the discussion point came around to include that possibility since then. And it could be, as I say, it could be someplace where you could, visitor picks up a map and shoots a QR code and says, oh, look at all these restaurants. Or look at all the, other trails that there are, or these historical points of interest.
well, I think that not only makes sense, if this is kind of an interim document, in lieu of the Z-Fold for now, because $200 is not going to buy you much.
No, I don't know how many it will buy, but they're going to be, when we get them back from the printer, they're going to be already folded, and we won't have to worry about that. So, it's a time saver for us. And currently, Brian's been doing them a handful at a time. I don't know how many he's been printing at a time, but when we talked about how much we're paying for the train wreck flyers, he realized that it would be cheaper for us to just go and have somebody do it. So to the rest of the branding committee, I will send out to Renee and Tira copies. And by the way, Karen has all of this stuff too. But with the suggestion that we think of what other aspects of the town could we use to sell this with these maps? I think if we're going to support our overall theme, and we partnered with ag, there's a whole page on farms. We partnered with, the restaurants. That makes sense. Historical Society makes sense. If we're going to really put our money where our mouth is, we got to start doing some of these things. We've been talking about QR codes for as long as I can remember. Let's just start. Oh, your memory is better than that. Your memory's not that poor.
It's just, yeah.
Okay,
So
so then the
that
next
didn't
thing
come up.
is the RFP marketing plan.
So you all know that Tara put together an RFP for a marketing plan, and that's been posted. Do we have any responses? As I'm curious.
No completed proposals, just the same couple of email inquiries that you've had back. Some people to whom I sent it directly, all of whom acknowledged and receipt and thanked me for it. The only person I know for sure is going to put in a proposal is Jen Bukowski, of course. But I sent it to a woman in, I think she either lives in Pomfret or she's working with Pomfret on some of their marketing stuff, and she's involved with the airline trail. So I'd actually really like to get her involved. I sent it to a graphic designer I know up in Worcester. I sent it to Delpha to ask Delpha to put it out on her network if she knew anybody appropriate. And of course, it's on the town website and BizNet. We've had some out-of-state inquiries. And, you know, and I kind of said, well, you're welcome to submit a proposal. Just be aware it's a, you know, bid not to exceed $5,000, and there's a public engagement requirement. So,
So
do whatever you want with that.
My other question, I mean, aren't there like, you know, marketing associations or somewhere that we can reach a broader audience without, instead of like handpicking who we're sending to and just putting on our website? Is there like an association or that we could send?
I don't really know the answer to that question directly. There probably is. Nothing that springs to my mind. I think anybody who's doing this work professionally does subscribe to BizNet, you know, for people who want to work on contracts like that. I mean, realistically, I think what we're going to get are, you know, 1 or 2 person shops who have low overhead, who can conceivably produce the work for the amount of money that we're asking for. And I mean, you know, I think we're going to get Jen and maybe 1 or 2 other people. That's what I really think. But that'd be okay, because that would give us something to look at for contrast, to see if our expectations are realistic in terms of what we'd like for the money. Yeah.
Okay. I'm getting nervous that we're going to get none.
Well, I don't think we're going to get none. And if we get 1 and it's Jen, then
it'll be a better proposal than what we saw.
It'll be a better proposal. Correct.
I have a question. Does anyone remember a couple of months ago, like in the fall, the woman who came around and gave us the survey? We also shared it on our Facebook page, or I can't remember the organization, about the outdoor recreation in the Northeast corner.
I do remember that.
Did we see the results of the survey or know the status of that? Just thinking about how we might be able to leverage that to, you know, also communicate that we see it as being an asset to the town. And
that was NECOG.
It was NECOG.
NECOG, yeah.
Okay, so I can reach out to them and see if
that would be great, Leslie.
Survey results are done.
Now, Ken, do you know if she's been attending the NECOG monthly meetings? Is she involved with NECOG?
I have no idea what she's involved
I know that
with.
she went to at least a few when they were live. I don't know what they're even doing right now. I assume that they're having virtual meetings, but
they're having virtual meetings because it was brought up at the NDDH meeting. You know, oh, several of you were just on the NECOG meeting, you know, yesterday, blah, blah, blah.
Okay.
It'd be interesting to know what, you know, it's like what's going on with NECOG. I mean, you know.
I'll start going.
Leslie, you should run for first selectman.
I don't live in Thompson.
We'll get you an absentee ballot.
Those are public meetings,
why don't you just get that river mill built and
no kidding. Hey,
fix some trails and maybe I'll move it. No, I'm just kidding.
Kenny, are those are public meetings, right?
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
It would be appropriate then for those of us that are interested in these aspects
Yes.
economic development to get on the mailing list, or
Yep.
get a list of who we can contact and reach out to and say, put me on the mailing list.
Yeah, I mean, even just to get on that email, just to kind of know. I mean,
I'd be curious
Okay.
about that survey
it's just all
too.
interconnected, you know? So
Yes, absolutely. Okay,
Okay.
Leslie's got homework. Charlie, what's next?
Next item, we've already talked about it, is the letter of support for airline trail work. And
Okay.
so you and Tira are going to be discussing that with Karen tomorrow.
Yep, it's all
If I
done.
understood that. And then it will be resolved. Next item is a garden, a house, and a forest to share grant.
Oh, that's a nice topic. Yeah, so I just sent in another grant application yesterday, actually. Today was the deadline, to a division of U.S. Department of Agriculture called
Good.
NIFA, which is the National Institute of Food and Agriculture. I think that's what it stands for. They have a grant program called the Community Food Projects Program. You can either apply for an implementation or a planning grant. As much as I would have loved to have applied for the implementation grant, there's a one-to-one match. So I applied for the planning grant to work out the master plan for the property that incorporates 65 Main Street and the addressless 14 acres of town-owned property behind it that runs along the French River.
Mm.
The proposal is for $15,000 in funding to hire a permaculture consultant. For those of you who don't know what permaculture is, it is a sort of hybrid form of agriculture, which is more about building ecosystems. In other words, it's not row cropping, it's not gardening in beds necessarily, although you can incorporate those things. It's more like building a natural system of plants that's self-sustaining. Anyway, so because it's a one-to-one match, the 15,000 plus that we are using as our portion of the match are all in-kind funds, both my salary, a portion of my salary, and consulting hours from 5 organizations: the American Chestnut Foundation, the Eastern Connecticut Conservation District, Connecticut Farm Bureau, Connecticut Rural Conservation and Development Area, Teague, and John Gudkowski as an independent, so 6 partners, as an independent land use consultant. We cobbled together about $17,000 of in-kind match to put towards it. So the point is that we created this multi-phase project incorporating a plan and public engagement process, not only to develop the community garden site, but to phase out and create the deliverables for the whole thing. So that includes the rehab of the house, the development of the small agricultural and food entrepreneurship business hub that we hope to house in it, and to develop the 14 acres, and this is where the permaculture consultant is most important, behind it as a public permaculture food forest park. In other words, we're planting that with perennial, native wherever possible, edible species over time, so that it is a free food amenity and a walking trail that ties into the whole property. So it's one big food system project with the economic development goal of having a small business center in a town-owned, town-sponsored property that will hatch businesses dreamed up by our own residents. So so the people who don't like local economic development can stick that in their pipe and smoke it if we get the grant. Even if we don't get the grant, the partners and I have agreed that the plan is sufficiently well described that we will move forward with all of the pieces, including the permaculture food forest. It's just that we'll get more bang for our buck if we have a permaculture specialist consult on that piece. So the plan will move forward. Related to that, and going back to the EDC budget, since one of the items was that we were going to put aside money for work on 65 Main, I am going to take those funds, which I think is going to be a total of $9 grand. We had asked for 10, they cut us back to 8, they took some other money away from some other things. I'm going to keep that 8 plus hometown, the Bank Hometown already gave us $1 grand dedicated to that project.
I didn't know that I didn't know there was money set aside for the teak project.
Yeah, that's one of the three, the three primary projects that we described as in EDC in prioritizing the budget. 65 Main, the train wreck park, and the pop-up village. So obviously getting the budget cut cuts us off at the knees for doing them all in the full way that we'd like, but I think the best thing to put the highest percentage back into is the 65 Main project to stabilize that foundation on the same principle as getting the garden started. The more you use the property, the harder it is to turn away from the investment, right? So if we fix the building so it's no longer in danger, you know, a physical hazard, then obviously we've shown progress. It's going to make it easier for me to go back and say, okay, we've done this. I'm really hoping that the Turtle Lot Trust will eventually kick in some funds, and I'm going to keep working on Joey Amartino about that. I know that they have some priority projects at the school, and I understand that. But the whole thing, if the whole thing goes through and we get the plan and the whole thing, then that is a super, super useful tool for applying for funding from real implementation projects, because the better your project looks on paper, the more likely it is that you're going to get money. I think we have a great application. I got letters of support from Representative Courtney, TLGV, Renee wrote one, somebody else wrote one. Oh, Joey Amartino wrote one. And then all the in-kind support from the partners. It's solid. It's solid. And, you know, who knows if we'll get the funds, but regardless, we're moving ahead with the project.
Okay.
I was glad to hear you mention the American Chestnut Foundation. I've been reaching out to them on a couple of other areas in town. I didn't realize until this week that the roots of a chestnut tree that died, the top of the tree could have died 100 years ago, and the roots are still alive and they're sending up new growth, new trees.
Water shoots.
Yeah, and we're looking at the tri-state marker path where a neighbor up there, a man named Andreas Lopez, has seen some. And we're looking at Bull Hill where chestnuts have been seen. Jack Swat is his name. He's the chairman of Connecticut's chapter of the American Chestnut Foundation. And he'll be coming over this way to look at some of the sites. One thing he said that caught my attention was the Bull Hill area, because of recent forestry that was done, tree cutting, the resprouts are getting a chance to get enough growth in to flower and seed before any blight would be back on them. And I will be gathering more information, but along the airline trail and up at the tri-state marker path, that's on town land. And if we find that there are chestnuts up there, American chestnuts, and we want to give them a boost, we could conceivably go in and clear some of the trees that are shading them. I don't know what they could do along the French River, but I'm excited about the prospect.
Yeah, so the piece that he and his organization are going to, I mean, everybody's going to be a part of the public workshop, but their specific contribution is going to be in that food forest to identify some portion of that acreage that would be best suited to a seed bank orchard within the larger food forest park.
Great.
So yeah, it turned out to be totally serendipitous that you looped us all into that conversation, because it was right when I was starting the process of writing this grant. So it really popped right to the front of my mind that this would be a good partner, and he was very amenable, and he's on board, and yeah. So either way, grant money or no grant money, we're getting it done.
Yeah, I think we are. That idea, by the way, I got the idea from Brian Lafredo, who questioned about chestnut trees, and it just started me looking, and all this time on my hands, why not?
All right, that's why we're good. We always talk. There's always a nugget in there, Charlie. You always have a good nugget. What's next on the list?
Invitation to other boards, commissions, and committees, in particular BOE and BOF.
That's mine, after our last meeting. So I'm just proposing that we send an invitation. Maybe together and Tara and I can draft that so it shares our shared vision clearly in that letter, and invite them to have people at the table with us. If there's any other boards that you think would be helpful, or it would be politically astute to have at the table, we can send it to them too. But those two are the ones that came to mind after our budget process.
This is for branding?
Yeah, so back in the day, this was 11-person board. There were
13, I think.
2 Board of Ed, 2 Board of Finance, 2 P&Z, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we actually had members who participated on a very limited basis. I know Joe Lindley did, then he fell sick. He was on the Board of Ed. And then the other member, when we opted, because we weren't getting people to our meeting, we said, let's make those people alternates. The other Board of Ed member volunteered to do that, because she wasn't coming anyway. And our Board of Finance, I can't remember beyond maybe one meeting that one of them came to.
Rhonda came to one, and Rhonda and Rob Mann were supposedly going to be the BOF members.
Yeah, and the 2 of them did come to our initial presentation we had at the cafe there, that kickoff in February. I think the 2 of them were there. But so I thought, you know what, it's time for a re-invite. But that's all. I just wanted to let you know I was going to do that.
I have somebody who I've reached out to with this, and also inland wetlands. She's a property owner and a small business in town. She's an artist, and she does illustrations for biology textbooks and things of that nature.
Cool.
So I've reached out to her, and she's expressed some interest. I specifically suggested branding, but she had responded first about inland wetlands. So I will continue to reach out to her. Keeping in mind the suggestion that Leslie made about having Department of Public Works and Parks at various other meetings. I, for one, want to see that part of trails, and I also think that we should reach out to Parks and Recreation Department, or Commission, whatever the Recreation, and specifically invite them in. Not just because Leslie is representing one aspect of it, but the people who need to be aware of why we want to do what we want to do. Those status quo thinkers, we want to try to outnumber them.
And certainly if there's anybody in the outside world, you know what I mean? Not that somebody that's not on another board that may have an interest, whether it's a business owner or whoever, we're welcome. So,
I thought that was funny. You said the outside world, and I'm looking at you with the earth behind you in the corona.
I mean, I know a lot of times it takes individual asks, but I think putting it out there too, you know, via email or social media or in whatever way to say like we're looking for, you know, people to join, you know, the committee. I mean, sometimes you can get folks that way. I've recruited board members with like a, you know, a yard sign before. So.
okay.
It
Sounds
would
good.
be, it would be nice if we get some of these people that have been critical of the non-movement of the economic development to actually partake in this.
I think
Right,
especially people that were elected to their positions.
Right, how can they be taking away money when they don't even know what's going on in any of these commissions?
Agreed.
Well, there was comments made during the Board of Finance meeting that, you know, we don't do any, you know, nothing is getting done. It's been like this for decades. And, you know, we need to do something, but yet when it comes for them to participate and make it move forward, they're nowhere to be found, or they're working in another town.
Well, that's
Yeah.
what it's like, okay, so I'm going to put it back on me or us and say, look, it's time for another outreach. So here's your chance. Put your money where your mouth is.
If you don't participate, then don't criticize.
Yeah.
Or take away the money that we're asking for to help better the town that we happen to want to see grow.
If you know better, help us. You know, if you know better, help us. I don't get it.
Yeah, well, I've said this before, Renee, that's all well and good as long as we get people who actually would be coming in to help and not to harm. And you know exactly who I'm thinking of because we're being recorded. I will not say the words, but yeah, there is at least one and possibly more than one individual who actually has a sabotage agenda. And, you know, if that's the person who shows up, I am not interested in making our work harder. The people here are working plenty hard. You know, if it's one thing, if it's somebody who actually is interested in starting to do the heavy lifting of the actual development, that's fine. Even if it's a slightly different point of view, that's fine. You know, varying points of view are great, but somebody whose main goal is actually to sabotage and remove funding on principle, I don't want that. So you guys don't deserve it. We don't deserve it.
Yeah, so I think we'll work out some sort of, you know what, basically it's, you have to buy into what we're doing. And
or show us a better way, was your earlier comment. If you've got all the answers, teach us.
Okay.
Whoa. Correspondent.
Anybody have anything else? I think that was the last thing.
Charlie, I was just going to say that, you know, I think that, you know, it is good to invite, and I will invite the rec commission, because I think even having representation from each commission or department, whether it's a shared responsibility, you know, like if I can't make it, someone else from the rec commission is there and they're reporting on that and they're collecting that information and it's a shared, you know, process. I think it's the same way. I would look at it the same way, you know, any representation from each board or commission or department, it's important, you know, to have. And I think the only thing to look at would just be to think about when we're promoting the, you know, coming on board or whatever, it's, you know, it's town, like really stressing, it's about town marketing and branding, you know, not just economic development, branding, marketing. It's about the town and every aspect of the town. We talk about the parks, we talk about the roads, we talk about the businesses, you know, we talk about every aspect of the town. And really, you know, I think that's important to stress. Then if we're talking about you, you should be here.
Well, you made me think because, you know, time has gone by and there has been elections and people have dropped off boards and people have come on board. So maybe I do send a letter to all.
Yes.
This is who we currently have. Because for instance, Blackie
I also
is
think this is what we need. You know, we're looking for people who have an expertise in this, who can maybe help us when we're working on marketing materials, who have an expertise in this, whatever it is. Like where are our holes as a committee that we need other folks to fill those. You know, so that it's a well-rounded team. That's
okay. All right.
Okay.
Go, Charlie.
Oh, I'm at a meeting where somebody's coughing.
Oh,
If you
Charlie.
don't keep it light, it will bury you.
All right.
Member comments.
Hearing none.
I'll just make one, Leslie. I knew this would happen. I put that call to musicians out. You're going to have an abundance of riches to choose from.
Oh,
Great.
yeah, I shared it too.
Thanks.
Don't share it anymore.
No, I
Don't-
won't. I
don't
put
share
up
it
on the
anymore.
Quiet Corner Songwriters.
I don't even know if we can have them. Don't share.
I know. Well,
know.
yeah. I mean, yeah. Everybody
I just
knows.
shared Tara's comment and said, hey, know about this.
We
What
just
are we talking about?
So East Woodstock Cornet Band backed out, and it's likely that Pulaski Brass is going to back out. And so we're just, I asked Tira to help reach out to some local artists, and particularly I think one of the challenges with such a small stage, it limits how many musicians we can have, you know, whether it's the gazebo or the trailer. And so looking for more, you know, like duos and trios, and although it's not that big band feel, it's still a concert and, you know, still providing entertainment. But
Sure.
difficult to get East Woodstock Cornet with 30 people.
Right.
They're like, yeah,
Well-
we want 8 feet apart. And I was like, yeah, like,
What about that
You see what
individual
they
that
did
we
at-
got with the garden, when we dedicated
Randy?
the gardens? That one
I
individual.
didn't specifically reach out to him, but I'm Facebook friends with his daughter, so I'm sure she saw it.
He was excellent.
Yeah, he was. He did a great job.
All right. Hearing nothing else.
Moses.
Did you see?
motion to
Aye.
adjourn. Ken,
Aye.
second.
Aye.
Aye.
8:36.
Aye.
There we go.
Aye.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Good evening,
Bye.
friends.
Good night, everybody.
Bye.
Good night.
Bye.
Aye.